Hey, and welcome back to JBC English Learning Academy. My name is Lura, and I'm here to guide you on your journey to clear, confident, and natural English. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a lesson. Your support truly helps this channel grow. All right, take a deep breath, relax, and let's begin today's session. On a quiet morning, when the sun rises softly and the world is still half asleep, I want to take you into a small story, a simple moment that many of us know very well, but we never really think about. And this moment begins with a young man named Daniel, who wakes up feeling tired, heavy, and a little lost, even though nothing is really wrong. And as he sits on the edge of his bed, holding his head in his hands, he wonders why life feels so slow and why his days feel the same again and again. As if he is stuck in a loop, not sad, not happy, but somewhere in the middle, floating. And while he looks at the window, he notices the soft light entering the room and painting the wall a warm yellow, and that small light makes him think that perhaps life can change, even if he does not know how yet. And this is the part of the story where I want you, the listener, to join Daniel, because maybe you, too, have days like this. Days when you want to feel better, lighter, more alive, and you don't know where to start. And this is why today we talk about exercise, not as a rule, not as something difficult, not as something only strong people do, but as something human, something simple, something that can bring happiness back into our lives in a quiet, gentle way, just like the morning sun that slowly wakes us up. And as Daniel stands up from his bed and goes to the kitchen to drink a glass of water, he remembers a conversation he had with his friend Maya, who once told him that movement is the language of the body, and when we stop moving, our body feels unheard, unseen, and maybe that is why life feels heavy sometimes. And Daniel thinks about this while touching his neck, feeling a stiffness that has been there for weeks, maybe months, and he sighs, wondering if something so simple like exercise could really change anything, because he has tried before, and he always stopped after a few days. And maybe you know this feeling too, the feeling of wanting to begin but not knowing how to stay consistent. And Daniel opens the window to feel the fresh morning air, and as the cool breeze enters the room, he feels a very small shift in himself, a tiny thought that whispers, maybe today can be different. And I want you to hold that thought too while listening to this story, because this is how real change starts, not with big decisions, but with small thoughts, small steps, small moments where we choose to move in a kinder direction. And as Daniel finishes his glass of water, he thinks about how tired he has been, not only physically but emotionally, tired of responsibilities, tired of screens, tired of sitting for hours, tired of not having energy to enjoy life, tired of feeling older than his age. And he remembers how, as a child, he used to run in the park for no reason at all, how he used to laugh so easily, how he used to climb trees, jump on rocks, and chase his friends without thinking about time or work or stress. And he wonders where that joy went, where that energy disappeared. And maybe you also remember a time in your life when movement was natural and fun, not a task, not a goal, but a part of being alive. And Daniel feels a quiet sadness in his chest, thinking about how far he feels from that version of himself. And this is the moment when Maya's voice returns to him again, a memory of her saying, "Exercise is not about the body first, it's about the mind, it's about taking care of the part of you that you cannot see." And Daniel sits down at the kitchen table and thinks about these words, and he slowly begins to understand that maybe he doesn't need to become strong or fast or perfect. Maybe he just needs to feel like he is trying to come back to himself. And this is the hook of our story, the invitation to explore why exercise is not only important for the body, but also important for a happy life. Because happiness does not come from something big. It comes from the way we feel inside. Our body, the way we breathe, the way we move, the way our heart beats when we take a walk or stretch our arms or simply stand under the sun and feel the warmth on our skin. As Daniel continues thinking, he notices something else, something surprising, a quiet realization that he cannot ignore, because while he sits at the table, He feels a sudden heaviness in his shoulders, the kind that comes from sitting for many hours every day, from working at a computer, from not using his muscles, and he touches his shoulder and feels a small pain, a reminder that his body has been asking for movement for a long time, and in that moment he whispers softly, "I need to change something," almost as if he is surprised to hear his own voice, and this tiny sentence becomes a seed, a start, a doorway to transformation, because change never begins with loud promises. It begins with small, honest acceptance, the kind Daniel is having right now. And maybe you can feel this too as you listen, because this story is not only about Daniel, it is about you and me, and everyone who has ever wanted to feel better inside their body and their mind. And then Daniel makes a simple decision, not a big one, not a strong one, not a perfect one, but a kind decision. He will go for a walk. Not a long walk. Not a fast walk. Just a walk outside his apartment, to breathe, to move, to see people, to feel the world again. And when he steps outside, the morning air feels cool and soft, and the street is quiet except for a few birds singing in the distance. And Daniel feels his feet touching the ground with each step, and he realizes how long it has been since he noticed something as simple as walking itself. And this small walk becomes the beginning of something bigger, something he cannot see yet, but something already happening inside him, because with each step, his thoughts become clearer, his mind becomes lighter, and he feels a small joy that he cannot explain, like his body is saying, "Thank you." And maybe you know this feeling too, the feeling that even a little movement can make your heart feel brighter. And as Daniel walks, he notices the world around him in a new way. He sees a woman watering her plants on a balcony, a man opening his shop for the day, a child walking to school holding his mother's hand, and he feels connected to life again, something he has not felt in a long time. And this is the first transformation of our story. The beginning of Daniel understanding that exercise is not only about muscles or strength or speed, but about waking up the quiet happiness inside us, the happiness that sleeps when we stop moving. And Daniel feels something soft and warm inside his chest, something close to hope, and he keeps walking because it feels good, not because he has to, but because he wants to. And this is the difference, the magic moment when exercise becomes joy instead of obligation. But soon, after a few blocks, Daniel begins to feel a little tired. His breath becomes heavier, his legs feel weak, and he pauses for a moment, leaning against a fence, and he feels embarrassed for a second, thinking, "Why is this so hard for me?" But then he gently reminds himself that everyone begins somewhere, that even the strongest people were beginners once, and he takes a slow breath and continues walking. And with this simple act of not giving up, he learns something important. Happiness is not about being perfect. Happiness is about being patient with yourself, and that is something we often forget. As he keeps walking, Daniel's mind begins to wander, and he thinks about the people he admires, people who seem calm, balanced, full of energy, and he wonders if exercise plays a role in their lives. And he remembers that Maya once told him she felt more confident, more peaceful, and more hopeful after she started moving her body every morning. And Daniel begins to understand that maybe exercise is not only a physical action but a mental anchor, something that keeps us steady when life becomes stressful, something that helps our mind breathe, something that gives us strength not only in our muscles but in our thoughts and emotions. He reaches a small park near his home, a place he has not visited in months, and he sits on a bench, listening to the leaves moving in the wind and watching people run, walk, stretch, laugh, and he feels inspired by them because they look alive, active, present, and he wonders what their lives are like, what brought them here, what they're feeling, and in that moment, he begins to see exercise not as something separate from life, but as a natural part of living, something that connects people, something that gives rhythm to the day, something that reminds us that we are human beings with bodies that were made to move. As Daniel watches a young woman jogging with her dog, he suddenly remembers something he once read. When the body moves, the mind improves, and although he cannot remember where he heard it, the sentence stays in his mind like a soft echo, and he wonders if this is true for him too, and the longer he sits, the more he feels that it might be, because his mind already feels clearer than it did when he woke up, and this makes him smile. A small but genuine smile, because for the first time in a long time, he feels like he is waking up. After a few minutes, Daniel stands up again and begins walking home slowly, feeling calmer, more grounded, and as he moves, he reflects on this simple morning walk, and he realizes something important. He did not need a gym, he did not need special clothes, he did not need a plan or a schedule. He only needed a small decision to begin, and this realization becomes the first key lesson of our story. The first takeaway of this journey we are sharing together. That exercise is not something big or impossible. Exercise begins with one small step, one small choice, one small moment of courage. And so, as Daniel returns home, breathing a little heavier but smiling a little brighter, he feels a spark of hope inside him and he thinks, maybe tomorrow I will walk again. And as the door closes behind him, the story of transformation truly begins, because change is not made of big actions, but of small, consistent moments that make the heart feel alive again. And this is where our first chapter ends, with Daniel standing in his quiet apartment, holding the memory of the morning inside his heart and feeling for the first time in a long time that happiness might be something he can choose, something he can build, something he can create with his own movement, one gentle step at a time. The next morning comes quietly, with the same gentle light entering Daniel's room, but this time something feels different, something small but real, because when he opens his eyes, he remembers the walk he took yesterday, and for a moment, he feels an unusual calmness in his body, like his muscles are resting in a softer way, and his mind feels a little lighter, as if someone opened a window inside his brain and let the fresh air in. And while he stretches his arms slowly, he thinks about a simple truth that he never really understood before. One small action can change the feeling of an entire day, and that thought stays with him as he gets out of bed and walks to the kitchen, where he pours himself another glass of water, just like he did yesterday, but now this small routine feels meaningful, like the beginning of a promise he is making to himself, a quiet promise to take care of his body and mind, even if just a little, even if just one step at a time. And as he stands there, holding the glass, he remembers something his grandmother used to say, "A gentle beginning is still a beginning," and these words make him smile softly because he finally feels what they mean. And maybe you listening right now also know this feeling, the feeling of wanting to build something new inside your life, but being afraid of starting too big. And Daniel realizes that small is not weak, small is not slow, small is not failure. Small is the seed that grows, and he feels encouraged by this idea as he finishes his drink and looks out the window to see the street waking up again. He decides to go for another walk, just like yesterday, not because he must, not because anyone told him to, but because he wants to feel that same clarity again, that softness of mind, that gentle peace that came to him yesterday when he was walking among the trees in the morning breeze. And so he puts on his shoes and steps outside, and this time, something interesting happens. Because the moment his foot touches the ground outside his apartment, he feels a familiar sense of comfort almost. Like his body remembers that this is good, this is helpful, this is healing. And he begins walking again with slow, steady steps, listening to the quiet sounds around him, the soft rustling of leaves, a distant dog barking, the bicycle wheels turning as someone rides past him, and the simple rhythm of his own steps. And he realizes something he never thought about before. When we move our body, we reconnect with the world around us. We become part of life again instead of feeling separated from it. As Daniel continues walking, he thinks about how easy it is to forget our own bodies, how easy it is to live every day inside our minds, thinking and worrying and planning, while our bodies wait silently, hoping we will give them a little attention, a little movement, a little love. And Daniel suddenly understands why he felt so tired for so long, not because he was weak, not because he was lazy, but because he forgot that his body needs movement the same way his mind needs rest. And this realization opens something inside him, something warm and gentle, like a small light turning on, and he keeps walking with renewed curiosity, wanting to understand more, wanting to discover how exercise connects to happiness in ways he never considered before. He reaches the small park again, and this time, he chooses a different path, one that goes past a group of older people doing slow stretching exercises together, and Daniel watches them for a moment, noticing how peaceful they look, how calm their faces are, and he wonders how long they have been meeting here every morning, and whether they also began with just one small walk, just like him, and he feels connected to them somehow, even though they do not know him, because they are all doing the same thing, taking care of themselves in a simple, gentle way, and that makes Daniel feel a little braver, a little stronger inside. And he decides to keep walking deeper into the park, where he finds a quiet path surrounded by tall trees that sway softly with the wind. As he walks along this path, he begins thinking about something that happened at work last week, something that made him frustrated and stressed, something he kept thinking about again and again, even though he didn't wanna, and he realizes that this is the first morning in many days that the thought does not feel heavy, the first morning he can think about it without feeling anxious, and he wonders if this is because of the walking, because of the movement, because his mind feels more spacious now, less crowded, more free. And he remembers Maya once telling him that walking is like medicine for the mind, a simple medicine that helps thoughts flow instead of getting stuck. And now he believes it, because he can feel it happening inside him. And as he walks, he notices something else, something surprising. His breathing feels smoother today, less tight, less forced, and he realizes that even though he only walked yesterday and is walking again today, his body is already responding, already healing, already becoming a little stronger, and this makes him feel proud of himself, a feeling he has not felt in a long time, and he whispers quietly, "I'm doing it," as if confirming to himself that he is truly taking a step toward change. And maybe you, listening now, can feel proud of yourself too if you're practicing English with this story, because improvement always begins with showing up, just like Daniel is showing up for his walks. He reaches a wooden bench under a large tree and decides to sit for a moment, feeling the cool shade around him, and he reflects on how different this morning feels from yesterday, how he feels a little more awake, a little more hopeful, a little more connected to himself. And he begins to understand something important. Exercise is not only about the body and not only about happiness. Exercise is about creating a small space inside each day where he can breathe, where he can focus on something simple and real, where he can be present, and he feels grateful for this simple discovery. And he thinks that maybe this is the first promise we make to ourselves when we begin moving again. The promise to show up, to try, to take care of ourselves even when life feels heavy. After sitting for a few minutes, Daniel stands up and starts walking back toward the entrance of the park, and as he moves, he feels the warm sun touching his arms, and he thinks about how much he forgot to appreciate nature, how much he forgot to pay attention to small things, like the way the light shines through the leaves, or the way the air smells after a cool night. And he realizes that exercise is not only movement. Exercise is attention. Exercise is presence. Exercise is connection. And this thought makes him feel even more motivated to continue this small journey. On his way home, Daniel thinks about how he used to see exercise as something difficult, something tiring, something he had to force himself to do, but now he sees it differently, as something natural, something gentle, something that brings him back to himself, and he feels a growing curiosity about how this journey will continue, how his body and mind will change if he keeps walking every morning, and he decides quietly, privately, that he will walk again tomorrow, and maybe the day after. That, and maybe even longer, and he smiles to himself because for the first time, This decision does not feel like pressure, it feels like kindness. When he reaches his apartment building, Daniel pauses for a moment before going inside, feeling the calmness in his chest, the softness in his breath, and he thinks about how different he feels from the person who woke up yesterday, and he realizes something very important. Happiness is not something far away. Happiness is something that grows slowly inside us when we take small actions to care for ourselves. And exercise is one of the simplest ways to begin. He opens the door to his apartment and steps inside, feeling more grounded, more balanced, more alive. And as he sits on his sofa, he reflects on the morning and on the small promise he made to himself, and he whispers softly, "I can do this." And that sentence fills him with hope, because it is not a big promise, not a heavy promise, but a gentle one, and gentle promises are the ones we keep. The next morning arrives with a soft gray sky and a cool wind that brushes against the windows, and when Daniel wakes up, he feels something new, something gentle but strong at the same time, a feeling of expectation, like his body is quietly waiting for him to get up and move again. And this small feeling surprises him because it has been a long time since he felt excited about the start of a day. And as he sits up in his bed, stretching his arms and feeling the small pull in his muscles, he realizes that his body is starting to respond, starting to wake up after months of stillness. And this makes him smile softly, because this is the first time he understands what people mean when they say that the body remembers. And while he gets dressed, slowly and calmly, he thinks about how different these last 2 days have been. Not perfect, not life-changing, but meaningful. And he feels grateful for every step he took, every breath he felt, and every small moment when he allowed himself to listen to his body again, because now he sees that exercise is not a punishment, not a duty, but a conversation between the body and the mind. And when he steps outside his apartment building, he notices that his footsteps feel lighter, as if his legs are happy to move. And as he begins walking toward the park, he thinks about something he never paid attention to before: how much the body speaks when we listen, and how much the body stays silent when we ignore it. And the more he thinks about this, the more he realizes that happiness is not only an emotion but also a physical state, a feeling that grows inside the body when the body feels alive. The air outside is cool, a little colder than yesterday, and Daniel pulls his jacket tighter around his shoulders, but the coolness feels refreshing, like the world is reminding him to stay awake, to stay present, and he walks with steady steps, listening to the soft sounds of the morning, the distant cars, the birds on the rooftops, and the gentle rhythm of his own shoes touching the ground. And as he walks, he begins thinking about something Maya once told him during a conversation at a cafe, something he did not understand at the time. Your body is the home you live in for your whole life, so take care of it with love. And now, after 2 small days of walking, he finally understands what she meant, because he can feel the difference inside himself, the way his mind feels calmer, the way his thoughts feel less heavy, the way his heart feels brighter, and he thinks that maybe the body has been waiting for him to return, waiting for him to care again. As he reaches the park, something interesting happens, because he notices the same group of older people doing their slow stretches under the same tree, and he watches them again, feeling inspired by their consistency, by their gentle commitment to movement, and he wonders if one day he will have the same kind of peaceful discipline, waking up every morning and moving without forcing himself, moving because it feels natural, because it feels like home. And he continues walking along the path, noticing that his breath feels smoother today, the tightness in his chest is weaker, and the heaviness in his legs is softened, and for the first time, he feels the joy of progress, not big progress, not visible progress, but the smallest kind, the kind that begins inside the body before anyone can see it from outside. And Daniel feels proud again, proud in a quiet, personal way. He walks deeper into the park, and while moving, he begins thinking about the last few months of his life, the long hours sitting at his desk, the screen glowing in front of him, the endless emails, the stress that slowly built inside his body like a heavy stone, the nights when he fell asleep too late, the mornings when he woke up with no energy, and he realizes that exercise is not just a tool to be healthy. Exercise is a way to release the weight of life, the invisible weight that we carry. Without noticing, and he whispers to himself, "No wonder I felt so tired," as he walks past a group of children playing with a ball, and he feels a wave of warmth in his chest watching their laughter, because their movement seems so free, so natural, so full of happiness, and he remembers again that he used to move like that too, when life was simple and joyful and full of play, and he wonders when he stopped playing, when life became so serious, so busy, so still, and this thought makes him realize something deeper. Exercise is not only movement, exercise is a way to reconnect with the part of us that still wants to play. As he continues walking, he follows a path that curves around a small lake in the center of the park, and he notices the reflections of the trees on the water, moving gently with the wind, and he feels a calmness he has not felt in months, a calmness that makes him slow down his steps and listen carefully to his own breathing, and he notices how peaceful it sounds, steady and soft, and he realizes that walking gives him something he did not know he needed: silence. Not the silence of loneliness, but the silence of peace, the silence that comes when the mind is not full of noise, not full of stress, not full of pressure, and Daniel feels grateful for this simple silence, because in this silence, he can finally hear his own thoughts clearly, without fear, without confusion, and this becomes a realization that touches him deeply. Exercise creates space inside the mind, space for clarity, space for healing, space for happiness. He stops for a moment to look at the lake, and as he stands there, breathing slowly, the wind brushing against his face, he feels something like a quiet opening inside his heart, a soft emotional shift, and he whispers, "Thank you," not knowing exactly who he is thanking, maybe the morning, maybe his body, maybe himself. And he smiles again because he is beginning to understand that happiness does not arrive suddenly. Happiness grows in small moments, in gentle steps, in quiet breaths, in simple movements, and he begins walking again with a new sense of purpose, a new sense of connection to himself. As he makes his way back toward the entrance of the park, Daniel thinks about how different he feels today, how different he felt yesterday, how each small walk is teaching him something new about himself, and he begins to notice something truly important. His body is communicating with him, not with words, but with feelings, with sensations, with energy, and he realizes that this is what it means for the body to speak. And for the first time, he feels ready to listen, and this makes him feel stronger inside, stronger in a way that is not physical but emotional, as if he is taking back control of his life, one step at a time. On his way home, he begins to reflect on what he has learned so far, and he realizes that the biggest challenge of exercise is not starting. The biggest challenge is believing that small efforts matter, that small movements can change the way we feel, and that taking care of the body is taking care of the mind. And Daniel understands now why people say exercise makes you happier. Because happiness grows when you feel alive inside your body, when your heart beats with purpose, when your lungs breathe with ease, when your legs move with freedom, and when your mind feels clear. And as he climbs the small stairs to his apartment building, he feels a comforting warmth inside his chest, a feeling that tells him he is on the right path. When he enters his apartment, he takes off his shoes and sits on the floor, breathing slowly, feeling the soft tiredness in his legs, the good kind of tiredness that tells him he did something meaningful, something healthy, something human, and he places his hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat slow down, and he whispers softly, "I'm changing," not as a dramatic statement, but as a gentle truth, because he can feel it. And this quiet transformation fills him with hope, hope that tomorrow will be a little easier, a little brighter, a little happier, and he knows now that he wants to continue this journey, not for results, not for appearance, but for the way it makes him feel inside, and that feeling is enough to keep going. The following morning arrives with a heavy sky, the kind of sky that looks tired even before the day begins, and when Daniel opens his eyes, he immediately feels something different, something he did not expect, because his legs feel sore, his shoulders feel tight, and his whole body feels heavier than yesterday, and for a moment, he wonders if maybe he pushed himself too much, maybe he is not ready to walk again. Maybe this whole idea of exercise is more difficult than he thought, and he sits on the edge of his bed with a small sigh, rubbing the back of his neck, feeling the stiffness in his muscles, and he thinks, why is today so hard? And maybe you know this feeling too, the feeling of waking up excited one day and waking up discouraged the next. And this is the moment when many people stop, when many people give up, when many people tell themselves that they cannot continue. But as Daniel sits there, breathing slowly, he remembers something important, something he learned during his short journey so far. Change is not a straight line. Change has ups and downs, easy days and hard days, and today is simply one of those hard days, and he closes his eyes for a moment, trying to understand what his body is telling him, and he realizes that the soreness he feels is not a sign of failure, but a sign that his body is waking up, using muscles he has not used in a long time, learning again how to move, how to stretch, how to live, and with this gentle understanding he whispers softly, "It's okay." And those two small words give him the courage to stand up and begin his morning routine again. He pours himself a glass of water and leans against the kitchen counter while drinking, feeling the cool liquid moving down his throat, refreshing him, waking him slowly, and he tells himself that he will still walk today, but he will walk softly, he will walk with kindness, he will walk at a pace that matches his body, not his expectations. And this becomes the quiet promise of the morning, a promise to continue even when it feels hard, especially when it feels hard, because Daniel begins to understand that the days that challenge us are the days that help us grow the most, and as he puts on his shoes, he feels a mixture of tiredness and pride because he is learning something new about himself. He is stronger than he thought. When he steps outside, the air is cool, and the wind is stronger than usual, blowing against his face, and he pulls his jacket tighter around him as he begins walking slowly toward the park, and with each step, he feels the soreness in his legs, the small ache in his knees, the heaviness in his body, but he also feels determination, a quiet determination that grows with every step, and he thinks about how easy it would be to go back home, to lie down again, to rest all day, but something inside him tells him not to. Something inside him says that every difficult step matters, every uncomfortable moment is part of the journey, and he keeps moving one slow step at a time, listening to the sound of the wind and the distant city noises, letting the cool air help him wake up more fully. As he reaches the entrance of the park, he notices that fewer people are outside today, probably because of the cold weather, and the park feels calmer, quieter, almost empty, and Daniel feels a small sadness at first, because he enjoyed seeing the older people stretching and the children running, but then he realizes that maybe today is meant to be a quieter day, a reflective day, a day to listen to himself instead of watching others, and he begins walking along the same path he took yesterday, feeling the gravel under his shoes, hearing the soft crunch with every step, and even though his body still feels heavy, his mind begins to open, slowly, gently, like a flower that is not ready, but still trying to bloom. As he walks deeper into the park, he begins to think about something people often forget. Progress does not always feel good, and growth is not always comfortable, and he remembers how he used to think that exercise was supposed to feel easy or enjoyable every day. But now he understands that growth is sometimes uncomfortable because it asks the body to do something new, something challenging, something unfamiliar. And he realizes that this discomfort is a sign of movement, a sign of life, a sign that he is changing, and he smiles softly to himself, even though his legs still ache, because this simple idea gives him strength. Discomfort means transformation is happening. He continues walking slowly, taking deep breaths, allowing his body to adjust, and after a few minutes, he notices something encouraging, something almost magical. The soreness begins to fade a little, the stiffness begins to loosen, and his steps become smoother, easier, lighter, and he feels a wave of relief wash over him, and he thinks, "My body is waking up again." And with this realization, he begins walking with more confidence, listening to the rhythm of his breath, feeling the warmth growing inside his muscles, and he understands something important. Sometimes the hardest part is not the walk itself, but the beginning, the moment when the body wants to stay still but the heart wants to move forward. As he approaches the small lake, he stops again to look at the water, noticing how the wind creates small ripples across the surface, and he listens to the quiet sound of the water touching the shore, and he feels a calmness slowly returning to him, even stronger than yesterday, and he thinks about how exercise is not only movement but also meditation, a way to clear the mind, a way to listen to the heart, a way to feel alive inside the body, and he whispers to himself, "I'm proud of you for coming today." And even though he says it softly, the words feel powerful because they are true, and he feels a small warmth in his chest, a warmth that tells him he made the right choice by continuing. As he continues walking, he begins thinking about something that has been on his mind for a long time, something he usually tries to avoid. The fear of failing, the fear of not being able to keep this new routine, the fear of disappointing himself again. And this fear makes his chest feel a little tight, but instead of pushing it away, he allows himself to feel it, to understand it, to face it. And he thinks about all the times he started something and stopped, all the times he promised himself success and then forgot. And he realizes that this fear is not new. It has been with him for years, quietly whispering doubts in the back of his mind. And he takes a deep breath, letting the cold air fill his lungs, and he tells himself something he has never said before. "I don't need to be perfect. I just need to try." And this sentence feels like a small weight lifting from his shoulders. As he walks past the tall trees swaying in the wind, he thinks about how easy it is to be hard on ourselves, how easy it is to expect too much, too fast, and how important it is to be gentle, to allow mistakes, to allow slow progress. And he realizes that exercise is not a test, not a race, not a competition, but a relationship with the body, a relationship that grows slowly, a relationship built on patience and kindness. And he feels a deep sense of peace as he understands this, a peace that comforts him and gives him strength to keep walking. After some time, Daniel reaches the far side of the park, an area he has not visited in years, and he sees an old wooden bridge crossing a small stream, and he feels drawn to it, curious about what lies on the other side. And as he walks across the bridge, listening to the soft sound of the water below, he feels a quiet excitement inside him, a feeling of exploration, a feeling of discovery. And he smiles because he realizes that exercise is giving him more than physical health. It is giving him adventure. It is reminding him that there are paths he has not walked, places he has not seen, parts of himself he has not discovered, and this fills him with a gentle joy. On the other side of the bridge, he finds a small open field with long grass moving in the wind, and he stands there for a moment, taking in the view, feeling the openness around him, and he thinks about how small his apartment feels compared to this wide space, and how small his worries feel when he is standing in nature, and he closes his eyes and takes a slow breath, letting the cold air fill his lungs, and he realizes that this feeling, this freedom, this clarity, this peace, might be happiness, not the loud kind, not the exciting kind, but the quiet kind, the kind that grows inside the heart and spreads through the whole body, and he smiles again, feeling grateful for this simple moment. As he begins walking back toward the main path, He reflects on the morning, on the soreness he felt when he woke up, on the heaviness that made him want to stay in bed, on the quiet determination that brought him outside, and on the transformation he felt as his body warmed up and his mind opened. And he realizes that this cycle, difficulty, effort, release, growth, is how all progress works, not only in exercise but in life, and he feels a deep understanding inside himself, a realization. That makes him whisper, "This is why exercise makes life happier, because it teaches patience, courage, resilience, and gratitude, and these are the foundations of a happy life." When he finally reaches the entrance of the park again, his steps are slower but confident, his breath is steady, and his mind is calm, and as he walks home, he feels a gentle pride growing inside him, a pride that comes from choosing himself, from choosing his health, from choosing movement even when it was hard, and he knows that today was an important day, maybe more important than the easy days, because today he learned that true growth happens when things feel difficult, and as he steps back into his apartment, feeling the warmth of his home around him, he whispers the same words again, "It's okay." And this time, the words feel like love. The next morning arrives slowly, with warm sunlight touching the curtains and a soft breeze moving through the small open window, and when Daniel opens his eyes, he feels something he has not felt in many months, maybe even years, something gentle and warm growing inside him like a small flame, because today he wakes up not with heavy legs or a tired mind, but with a quiet excitement, a calm energy that fills his chest, and as he sits up, he realizes that his body feels awake in a new way. His muscles feel alive, his breathing feels deeper, and his heart feels lighter, and he smiles softly to himself because he finally understands something important. This journey he started was never about walking, it was about coming back to himself, piece by piece, breath by breath, step by step, and as he gets out of bed and makes his way to the kitchen, he feels a warm gratitude for the simple habits he has built over the last few days, habits that feel small but meaningful, habits that make him feel connected to his life again. And when he pours his glass of water and takes a slow sip, he realizes that this tiny routine, this very small act of drinking water in the morning, now feels like a conversation with his body, a way of saying, "I am here, I am listening, I care." And these words are not spoken out loud, but they are felt deeply inside him, in a place he had ignored for a long time. As he puts on his shoes and prepares to leave the apartment again, he feels a soft happiness inside him, not the loud kind that makes you jump or shout, but the quiet kind that makes you breathe a little slower, smile a little deeper, and feel grateful for the smallest parts of life. And when he steps outside, he notices something surprising. The world around him looks brighter, not because the weather has changed, but because he has changed. Because when the mind is clear, the world looks clearer too, and he begins walking with steady steps toward the park, feeling the strength in his legs, the rhythm in his breathing, and the peacefulness in his mind. And as he walks, he thinks about how quickly life can change when we choose to take care of ourselves, how a few days of gentle movement can create a new sense of purpose, a new sense of hope, a new sense of who we are. When Daniel enters the park, he feels a deep familiarity with the place now, like it has become a part of his morning, a part of his life, a part of his healing, and he walks along the path with a soft smile as he watches the older people stretching under the tree again, their calm faces peaceful as always, and he nods at them with quiet gratitude, even though they do not know him, and he continues walking, feeling the warmth of the sun on his arms and the gently moving shadows of the trees around him, and as he approaches the lake once more, he slows down his steps, remembering all the moments he stood here thinking, feeling, learning, and he realizes that this lake has become a mirror for him. A mirror that reflects not his face but his feelings, his fears, his changes. And today when he looks at the water, he feels something powerful, acceptance. He continues walking along the path, and his mind drifts back over the last few days, remembering the first morning when he woke up feeling tired and heavy, unsure of what to do, unsure of what he needed, and he remembers how one simple walk brought a little peace into his day, and then another walk brought a little clarity, and then another brought a quiet strength, and he realizes that this journey was never about exercise alone. It was about understanding himself, understanding that the body and the mind are always talking to each other, and when one suffers, the other suffers too, and when one heals, the other heals with it, and he whispers softly, "I understand now," because he truly does, and the words feel warm in the air as he continues walking deeper into the park. As he reaches the small wooden bridge again, he slows down and places his hands gently on the railing, looking over the water below, listening to the soft sound of it moving around the stones, and he remembers how he crossed this bridge for the first time when he was feeling uncertain, tired, and a little afraid, but today he stands here with a different energy, a stronger energy, an energy filled with calm confidence. And he realizes something important about exercise, something he never thought about before. Exercise teaches us to move even when we feel tired, to continue even when we don't want to breathe even when life feels heavy. And these lessons are not only for the body, they are lessons for life, for every difficult moment, for every challenge, and for every fear, because learning to move through physical discomfort teaches us to move through emotional discomfort too. He continues walking across the bridge and into the open field with the tall grass, and when he stands in the middle of it, he feels the wind touching his face and the warmth of the sunlight on his back, and he closes his eyes for a moment, feeling the world around him, feeling the quiet movement of nature, and he takes a slow, deep breath, the kind of breath that fills the whole body with peace, and he realizes something beautiful. This is happiness, this quiet, gentle moment, this feeling of being alive, this feeling of being present, and he whispers, "Thank you," not to anyone in particular, but to the moment itself, to the journey he has taken, and to his body for carrying him through it. As he begins walking again, he thinks about the person he was a few days ago, the person who woke up tired, unmotivated, disconnected, and he realizes how far he has already come, and he feels a soft compassion for his old self, because he understands now that he was not weak, he was not lazy, he was simply tired, overwhelmed, and disconnected from his own needs. And this compassion grows inside him like a warm light, because he knows that many people feel this way, many people struggle quietly. Many people want to feel better but do not know where to begin, and he thinks, if only they knew how much a small walk could change. And he hopes that one day he can share this discovery with someone who needs it, just like Maya once shared her wisdom with him. As he walks toward the far edge of the field, he begins thinking about the future, not with fear like before, but with curiosity, with hope, with a quiet excitement for the days ahead, and he imagines himself continuing these walks, maybe adding a little stretching, maybe trying a light jog someday, maybe inviting a friend to join him, and he realizes that exercise is not a task, not a burden, not something he needs to force himself to do, but something he can grow into, something that will grow with him, something that will support him through the seasons of his life. And this realization fills him with a peaceful confidence, a confidence that feels warm and steady. When he finally begins heading back toward the main path, his steps are slow and thoughtful, and he feels a quiet joy inside him, a joy that says, "You are doing well." And as he returns to the familiar part of the park, he notices something new, a young woman sitting on a bench painting the landscape, her canvas full of soft colors, and he watches her for a moment, noticing how peaceful she looks. And he realizes that she too is practicing something gentle, something healing, something that connects her to herself. And he smiles because he understands that everyone has their own way of finding happiness, and exercise is only one of those ways, but it is a way that opens the door to many others. As Daniel walks back to the entrance of the park, he reflects on everything he has learned, on every moment of clarity, on every moment of discomfort, on every moment of growth, and he understands now why exercise is important for a happy life. Not because it makes us strong, not because it makes us fast, not because it changes our appearance, but because it reconnects us with life, with our bodies, with our breath, with our emotions, and with the world around us. And he whispers softly, I choose this life, because for the first time, he feels in control, he feels present, he feels alive. When he reaches his apartment and steps inside, he closes the door gently and sits down on the floor just like he did on the earlier days, placing his hand on his heart, feeling its steady rhythm, and he realizes something powerful. He is happy, not perfectly happy, not magically happy, but peacefully happy. And this kind of happiness is real. This kind of happiness is strong. This kind of happiness grows slowly through movement, through patience, through self-kindness, and through the simple act of showing up for yourself every day. And he smiles and whispers, thank you, body. And for the first time in a very long time, he means it. And this is where his journey continues, not ends, because exercise is not a destination but a lifelong relationship, a gentle promise we make to ourselves, a promise to listen, to care, to move, and to live fully in the only body we will ever have. And as Daniel lies down on his back, looking up at the ceiling, breathing softly, he feels a deep sense of joy, a joy that whispers, you have returned to yourself. And this is the quiet, beautiful moment when everything finally makes sense. The next few mornings arrive like a soft rhythm, one day blending into the next in a calm and gentle way, and each day, when Daniel wakes up, he feels a little lighter, a little clearer, a little more connected to himself. And this change does not happen suddenly. It grows slowly like the rising sun, and as he stretches his arms in bed and feels the small pull in his muscles, he understands that his body is learning to trust him again, learning to move again, learning to breathe again. And while he prepares himself for his morning walk, he looks at the sunlight sliding across his bedroom wall and feels a deep gratitude for these small moments, moments he used to rush through, moments he never noticed before. And as he ties his shoelaces, he thinks about how different his life felt only a week ago, how tired he was, how disconnected he felt, and how far he has already come with these simple daily walks. And he whispers softly, who knew such a small thing could change so much? Because he is truly surprised, and as he steps outside, feeling the fresh morning air touch his face, he smiles gently, knowing that this is no longer a routine he forces himself to do, but a part of his life he looks forward to, a part of his life that makes him feel alive. When Daniel enters the park, he notices that the world around him feels different now. Not because the park has changed, but because he has changed, and he walks confidently along the familiar path, hearing the birds, feeling the breeze, watching the sunlight move through the branches, and he thinks about something interesting. The world has always been this beautiful, but he never saw it before because his mind was too tired, too busy, too stressed, and now that his mind is clearer, the world feels brighter. And he remembers something Maya once said when they were walking near the river months ago. Exercise doesn't change the world, it changes the way you see the world. And he finally understands the meaning of her words, because every morning now feels like a gift, a chance to reconnect with a simple beauty he once ignored. And as he walks deeper into the park, he breathes slowly and deeply, feeling the warm sun on his skin. And he realizes that this gentle happiness, this peaceful joy, is something he created with his own effort, his own patience, and his own choice to keep showing up. As he approaches the lake, he slows down, not because he is tired, but because this place has become special to him, a place where he thinks clearly, a place where he feels calm, a place where he listens to himself, and he stands by the water, watching the small ripples move across the surface, and he thinks about something new. Maybe happiness is not a destination far away. Maybe happiness is a feeling we build each day through small actions, and he realizes that exercise has opened a door. Inside him, a door to clarity, to peace, to self. But on the fourth day of this new week, something unexpected happens, something that catches Daniel by surprise, because when he wakes up, he feels a wave of sadness, not a strong sadness, but a quiet, gentle one that sits in his chest like a small weight. And he does not know why he feels this way, because nothing bad has happened, nothing is wrong, and yet the sadness is there, and for a moment he wonders if maybe he is going backward. Maybe this happiness he felt was only temporary. Maybe he will fall back into the old habits again, and he sits on his bed, feeling a little confused, a little lost, and he thinks, why do I feel sad today? And this question stays with him as he gets up slowly and walks to the window, looking outside at the quiet street, and he realizes something important. Emotions do not follow logic. Emotions do not follow routines. Emotions flow like weather, sometimes sunny, sometimes cloudy, sometimes calm, sometimes heavy, and this is a normal part of being human. He sits at his kitchen table with his glass of water, holding it in both hands, and he decides something courageous. Even though he feels sad, he will still go for his walk, not to escape the sadness, not to push it away, but to walk with it, to let his body help his heart move through it. And this decision becomes a quiet turning point for him, because he realizes that exercise is not only for happy days. Exercise is also for sad days, confused days, stressful days, and as he steps outside, the morning air feels cool and calming, and he begins walking slowly, feeling the heaviness in his chest start to soften little by little. When he enters the park, he notices that the world around him is still beautiful, still peaceful, still alive, even though he does not feel the same joy today, and he learns something new. Happiness is not the only emotion that belongs in the park. Sadness can belong here too, and as he walks along the path, he lets his thoughts flow naturally, not fighting them, not judging them, and he begins to understand himself more deeply, because he realizes that the sadness he feels today is not a sign of failure, but a sign of growth, a sign that he is becoming more aware of his emotions, more connected to himself. And this awareness, though uncomfortable, is also beautiful. As he continues walking, he reaches the lake again, and this time he sits on the small bench near the water, watching the way the wind moves across the surface, and he notices that the water looks different today, not because of a sadness, but because he is paying attention in a new way, and he begins reflecting on something he never thought about before. Movement is a form of processing. Movement is a way to help emotions travel through the body instead of getting stuck, and he remembers that. On days when he used to sit at home doing nothing, his sadness felt heavier, but now, as he walks, the sadness feels lighter, more gentle, more movable, and he whispers softly, "It's okay to feel this," and those words make his sadness soften even more. As the days continue, Daniel begins learning an even deeper truth. Exercise is not only about energy, strength, or health. Exercise is also about emotional honesty, because when he walks, he allows himself to feel everything: joy, sadness, confusion, hope, and his body supports him through all of it, and he realizes that this journey is teaching him emotional courage. The courage to sit with uncomfortable feelings instead of avoiding them, the courage to keep moving forward even when he doesn't feel perfect, and the courage to trust that every emotion will eventually pass like clouds in the sky. Later in the week, something beautiful happens, something small but powerful, because while Daniel is walking through a quiet path filled with tall trees on both sides, he suddenly feels a moment of deep clarity, a moment where everything becomes quiet inside him, and he understands something important. He is not walking to escape his life. He is walking to meet it, to understand it, to see it clearly, and he feels a sense of peace that spreads from his chest all the way to his fingertips, and He realizes that this journey of exercise has become a journey of self-discovery, a journey of emotional healing, a journey of finding his true self again after years of being disconnected. As the sun rises higher in the sky, Daniel finishes his walk and begins heading home, feeling calm, grounded, steady, and he thinks about how much he has learned in just 1 week, how exercise has shown him that happiness is not something you chase, but something you grow, something you water with small daily actions, something you create by listening to your body and caring for your mind. And as he climbs the stairs to his apartment, he smiles softly, feeling a quiet pride inside him because he knows that he is becoming the person he always wanted to be, not through big changes, but through gentle ones. And when he enters his apartment and closes the door behind him, he sits on the floor once more, placing his hand on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart, and he whispers, "Thank you for staying with me," speaking to his own body, to his own heart, and to his own courage. And this moment becomes one of the most important truths he has learned so far. Exercise is not simply a routine, it is a relationship with yourself. A relationship built on trust, patience, understanding, and love. And as he lies down on the floor with a soft smile on his face, he whispers the words that now feel true in every part of his body. I am changing. I am healing. I am coming back to myself. The next morning arrives with a soft gray sky, the kind of sky that feels quiet and gentle, like the world is still waking up. And when Daniel opens his eyes, he feels the familiar calmness that his new morning routine has created inside him, and he takes a slow breath as he sits at the edge of his bed, feeling the coolness of the floor beneath his feet, and he smiles because he knows exactly what he will do next, not because he must, but because he wants to. And as he walks to the kitchen and pours his morning glass of water, he feels a sense of peace moving through him, a sense of rhythm that has now become a part of his daily life. And while he takes small sips, he looks around his apartment and notices something. As Daniel steps outside, the air feels cool and refreshing, with a gentle wind brushing against his cheeks, and he notices the sound of leaves rustling above him, creating a slow whisper across the street, and he begins walking toward the park with steady, relaxed steps, feeling his body move with a natural ease. And while he walks, he begins thinking about how different his relationship with movement has become. Because a week ago he walked only to escape his stress, but now he walks to understand himself, to listen to himself, to feel alive. And he remembers the sadness he felt just a few days earlier, a sadness that surprised him, a sadness he carried with him into the park. And he realizes now that this moment changed something deep inside him, because instead of hiding from his emotions, he walked with them, sat with them, breathed with them, and discovered that movement can help emotions flow instead of getting stuck. And he whispers softly, "Thank you for teaching me." As if he is speaking to his younger self, the self that used to avoid his feelings, the self that used to sit quietly in his room pretending he was fine. And he realizes now that exercise has become not only physical training but emotional training too. When he arrives at the park entrance, he sees a small sign placed on the grass. Community Movement Day. Join us this Saturday, written in bright, friendly letters. And even though he usually avoids events like this, something inside him feels curious, almost excited, and he thinks, maybe I could try, but he doesn't make a decision yet. He simply carries the thought with him like a small seed waiting to grow. And he begins walking inside the park, noticing the morning joggers, the older people stretching near the big tree, and the children playing near the fountain, and he smiles because he feels like he belongs here now, not as a visitor, not as someone passing through, but as someone who has become a part of this gentle morning world. As he walks along the path, he reaches the wooden bridge again, and this time he stops in the middle and places his hands on the railing, feeling the cool texture of the wood, and he listens to the water below, the soft movement of it flowing around stones, And he thinks about how life often feels like this water, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes loud, sometimes quiet, and yet it always keeps moving, always finds a way forward, always continues its journey, and he realizes that his life is the same. Even when he feels stuck, even when he feels confused, there is always a quiet forward motion inside him, and exercise has helped him find that motion again, and he whispers, "I am flowing again," and the words feel gentle and true. He continues walking and eventually reaches the open field, where the tall grass moves like waves under the soft wind, and he steps into the center of the field, closing his eyes and lifting his face slightly toward the sky, feeling the cool breeze against his skin, and in this moment, he feels deeply connected to everything around him, the sky, the trees, the wind, the earth, and he feels a warmth inside his chest. The kind of warmth that feels like understanding, like clarity, like truth, and he realizes something he had never noticed before. The body always speaks, always tries to tell the truth, always tries to guide us, but we often ignore it. We silence it with stress, distraction, or fear. And now, through these gentle walks, Daniel has learned how to listen, how to hear the subtle messages from his body, messages that say, "I am tired, I need rest, I need movement, I need breath." And he smiles because listening to his body has become one of the greatest gifts he has given himself. As he finishes his walk and heads home, he feels a rising excitement about Saturday and the community event, and though part of him still feels nervous because he is not used to joining group activities, another part of him feels ready, curious, open, and he tells himself, maybe it's time to try something new, because he knows that growth often begins with small steps outside our comfort zone. And he feels proud that he is becoming someone who says yes to life instead of hiding from it. The next day arrives with warm golden sunlight, and after his morning walk, Daniel decides to clean his apartment a little, not because he has to, but because he feels motivated to create a space that supports his new life, and while he wipes the table, folds blankets, and opens the windows to let fresh air in, he notices that cleaning does not feel like a chore today. It feels like an extension of his movement, an extension of his new energy, and with each small action, he feels a deeper sense of clarity in his mind, and he says quietly, everything is connected, because he now understands that when the body feels good, the mind feels better, and when the mind feels better, the world feels more organized, more peaceful, more manageable. Later that afternoon, Daniel sits at his small desk with a notebook he has not used in a long time, and without planning it, he begins writing down his thoughts, his emotions, his discoveries from the last week, and his handwriting flows across the page like the gentle water under the bridge. And he writes about how movement helped him understand his sadness, how breathing helped him calm his fears, how walking helped him reconnect with himself, and how his body has become his teacher, showing him what he needs, showing him how to live more honestly. And when he finishes writing, he feels a deep peace in his chest, as if the words have created more space inside him for new hope, new dreams, and new beginnings. Saturday finally arrives, and though Daniel feels a touch of nervousness as he gets ready, he also feels a soft excitement in his stomach, the kind of excitement that comes from stepping into something unknown, something new, something that might change your life in a beautiful way. And when he arrives at the park, he sees people of all ages gathering near the big tree, children stretching their arms with laughter, older people moving gently with peaceful smiles, young adults chatting quietly. As they warm up, and Daniel feels something he hasn't felt in a long time, a sense of belonging, not because he knows these people, but because they are all here for the same reason, the simple desire to move, to breathe, to feel good. Soon, a friendly instructor stands in front of the group and begins guiding them through simple movements, slow and gentle, and as Daniel follows along, he feels his muscles stretch, his breath deepen, and his mind relax, and he looks around and sees people smiling, laughing, trying their best, not caring if they move perfectly or not, and he realizes something powerful. Exercise becomes easier when you do it with others, when you feel supported, when you feel seen, and as he moves with the group, he feels a quiet joy rising inside him, a joy that says, "I am not alone." After the session ends, people begin talking with each other, sharing small stories, laughing softly, and before he knows it, Daniel finds himself in a conversation with a young man named Lucas, who tells him that he started walking after a difficult year, and a woman named Anna, who says that movement saved her from stress at work, and an older man who says that walking every morning helped him heal after losing his wife. And as Daniel listens, he feels a deep connection with these strangers, because their stories remind him that everyone carries something, everyone struggles with something, everyone heals from something, and exercise becomes a bridge between people, a bridge of shared effort, shared breath, shared hope. When Daniel walks home afterward, he feels lighter than ever, not because of the physical movement alone, but because he has felt the power of community, the power of connection, the power of being seen and supported, and he whispers, "I think I needed this," because the warmth inside his chest feels stronger than before, and he knows now that happiness grows faster when shared. When he arrives home, he sits once again on the floor, placing his hand gently on his heart, feeling the beat that has guided him through every step of this journey, and he realizes something profound. The body does not only speak through pain or discomfort, it also speaks through joy, through peace, through strength, and through the quiet rhythm of the heart. And as he sits there breathing softly, he understands that listening to his body is one of the most important skills he has learned, a skill that will guide him for the rest of his life. And while the evening sun shines softly through his window, painting warm colors across the wall, he whispers the words that now feel like a promise to himself, a gentle, loving promise. "I will keep moving. I will keep listening. I will keep growing." And with these words, Daniel feels a deep, beautiful truth settling inside him. That exercise is not just a path to a happier life, it is a path back home to himself. The next morning begins with a soft golden light entering through Daniel's half-open curtains, and as his eyes slowly open, he feels something new, something peaceful and steady, almost like a quiet strength resting inside his chest, and he lies still for a moment, listening to his own breath, feeling how calm and natural it is, and he realizes that mornings no longer feel heavy, no longer feel rushed, no longer feel like a battle with himself, because something inside him has shifted, something gentle but strong, and as he sits up and stretches his arms, he whispers softly, "I feel different," not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, honest way, because the difference he feels is not about energy or excitement. It is about stability, about balance, about the slow, steady confidence that grows when we take care of ourselves day after day. And as he begins his morning routine, pouring water into his favorite glass, feeling the coolness of the cup against his fingers, he feels grateful for these small rituals that now shape his day with calm and intention. When he steps outside, the air feels fresh and clean, with a light breeze brushing across his face, and he begins walking with a natural rhythm, a rhythm his body has learned and now remembers easily. And as he heads toward the park, he notices how relaxed his shoulders feel, how steady his breathing is, how light his steps are, and he thinks about something he once read in an old book. Strength grows quietly, and he smiles because he finally understands what those words mean, not with his mind alone but with his whole body, because the strength he feels now did not come from pushing himself, from forcing himself, or from trying to impress anyone. It came from gentle daily movement, from choosing to show up, from listening to his body even on difficult days, and this quiet strength feels more real, more reliable, more alive than anything he has felt in the last few years. When he enters the park, he sees the familiar morning scene. The older people stretching under the big tree, the parents with their small kids, the young joggers moving with steady pace, the people sitting on benches enjoying the calm morning air, and he feels a deep sense of connection, a warm feeling that he is part of this world, part of this rhythm, part of this beautiful morning life that unfolds around him every day. And as he walks along the path, he thinks about how disconnected he once felt, how distant he used to feel from everything and everyone, and he realizes now that movement did not only reconnect him with his own body, it reconnected him with the world, with nature, with other people, and with the simple beauty of being alive. As he reaches the bridge, he stops like he always does, placing his hands gently on the wooden railing, feeling the cool surface beneath his palms, and he watches the water flowing softly below, the quiet movement of it calming his thoughts, and he realizes something important. Walking has become a way for him to think clearly, a way to understand his own emotions, a way to listen to his heart without distraction. And he remembers the sadness he felt earlier in the week, a sadness that made him wonder if he was losing progress, but now, looking at the water, he understands something deeper. Sadness is not a sign of going backward. Sadness is part of the journey forward, because every emotion that rises is a chance to understand ourselves better, and exercise gives those emotions space to move, space to soften, space to be felt without fear. He continues walking and soon reaches the open field where the tall grass moves gently in the wind, and he steps into the center, breathing deeply, feeling the air fill his lungs with ease, and he closes his eyes, letting the sunlight warm his face, and in this simple moment, he feels deeply connected to himself, to the earth beneath his feet, to the sky above him, and to the quiet truth that lives inside every person. A truth that says we are capable of more than we think. We are stronger than we know, and we can find peace even in difficult times if we keep moving forward with patience and love. As the days pass, Daniel begins to notice something surprising. His body now reminds him when it wants to move, when it needs to stretch, when it needs fresh air, and he laughs softly to himself the first time he feels this, because he never imagined that his own body would ask him for exercise, and he thinks, this is new, but the feeling is gentle and natural, and he realizes that movement has become like breathing. Something his body expects, something his body trusts, something that helps him feel balanced and whole. One warm afternoon, after finishing work earlier than usual, Daniel decides to take a second walk, something he has never done before, and as he steps outside again, he feels a light excitement, a childlike joy rising inside him, and he thinks about how strange and beautiful this transformation is, because only a short time ago he struggled to go outside even once a day, and now he wants to walk twice, not because he must, but because it makes him feel good, and he whispers, "This is what change feels like," and the words follow him gently as he walks down the quiet street toward the park. When he reaches the lake, the sun is beginning to set, painting the water with soft colors of gold and orange, and he stands there, feeling the warm light on his skin, and he thinks about how peaceful this place has become for him, how it has become his safe space, his thinking space, his healing space, and he remembers something Maya once told him. Your body remembers the places where you heal. And now he understands exactly what she meant, because this lake has become a place his body trusts, a place where his thoughts untangle, a place where his heart feels light, and he whispers, "Thank you, lake," feeling a gentle gratitude for the quiet support this place has given him. As he walks back home under the soft evening light, he begins thinking about how movement has changed him not only physically, not only emotionally, but mentally too, because he thinks clearer now, he reacts calmer, he sleeps better, He feels more patient with himself and with others, and he feels more present in each moment, and he laughs gently because he never expected walking, such a simple thing, to create so much change. And yet it has, one step at a time, one breath at a time, and he realizes something important. The greatest transformations often come from the smallest actions. When he returns home, he makes a simple dinner, feeling relaxed and satisfied, and afterward, he sits on the floor again, placing his hand on his heart, feeling the strong, steady rhythm beneath his palm, and he closes his eyes, breathing slowly, and he feels a wave of gratitude for his body, for his breath, for his journey, and for the quiet strength that has grown inside him, a strength he never saw before, a strength that was always there but hidden under stress, under worry, under fear. And now that he has learned to move, to breathe, to listen, this strength has risen to the surface, and he whispers softly, "Thank you for staying with me," because he finally understands that his body has always been trying to protect him, always trying to guide him, always waiting for him to listen. Over the next week, Daniel begins trying new things: gentle stretching in the morning, a slow jog for a few minutes during one of his walks, a longer route through a different part of the park, and each new step feels natural, exciting, and empowering, and he begins to trust his body more, to trust his mind more, to trust the process more, and he realizes that exercise is not about perfection, not about speed, not about performance, but about connection, about growth, about healing, and about learning who you truly are beneath the noise of daily life. One evening, after finishing a long but productive day at work, Daniel feels a familiar heaviness inside him, not sadness exactly, but something like emotional tiredness, and instead of ignoring it or distracting himself with a screen, he decides to move, to walk slowly through the quiet streets with his hands in his pockets, and as he walks, he feels the heaviness begin to soften, begin to loosen, begin to lift, and he thinks, "My body knows how to help me now," and this realization fills him with a deep comfort, a comfort that feels like coming home. When he returns to his apartment, he sits by the window and watches the night sky, the soft glow of the city lights reflecting off the clouds, and he whispers to himself, "I'm proud of you," speaking to the version of himself who kept walking, who kept showing up, who kept trying, even when he felt tired, even when he felt sad, even when he felt unsure, and he realizes that this journey has been more than exercise. It has been an act of self-love, an act of courage, an act of quiet strength. And as he prepares for sleep, lying down with a calm mind and a peaceful heart, he whispers the words that now feel like a promise for the rest of his life. "I will keep moving forward." Because now he knows that movement is not only what keeps the body alive, it is what keeps the spirit alive too.